I haven't slept well in 6 months. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there lying on the snow, running through the trees, hearing those sounds behind me. Everyone keeps asking what happened. My friends, my family, even the therapist my parents made me see. I told them it was a bear attack. That's what the official report says. That's what everyone believes. But I was there. I saw what happened to my friends. And I know bears don't hunt like that. Bears hibernate in winter. The trip was supposed to be simple, 3 days in the Cascade Range of Washington, late January. Just 3 friends in our 20s looking for adventure, trying to prove we could handle real winter camping. None of us had ever done anything like it before. We'd gone camping in summer, sure, but winter was different. We thought we were ready, we thought we could handle it, but we weren't. We couldn't. And my 2 best friends paid the price for that mistake. We left on Friday morning in a borrowed SUV fitted with snow chains. The drive to the trailhead took about 3 hours. We arrived around noon, the sun high and bright over the snow. I still remember how excited we were, loading up our packs, checking our gear, taking pictures beside the trail marker. We looked like real mountaineers in our new winter gear, thick boots, thermal jackets, ice axes strapped to our packs, though we probably didn't need them. The snow on the trail was about 2 feet deep, maybe more in places. Someone had hiked the trail recently, so it was partly packed down, which helped. But it was still hard work lifting our legs high with every step, heavy packs dragging on our backs. The temperature was cold, but not unbearable, around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The sunlight helped a little. We hiked about 3 miles before finding a good spot to set up camp, a small clearing near a frozen creek with a few trees along the edge to block the wind. The snow there was untouched, except for a few animal tracks we couldn't identify. Maybe a rabbit, maybe a fox. We didn't think much of it. Setting up camp took longer than expected. The ground beneath the snow was frozen solid, and driving in the tent stakes was tough. We had 2 4-season tents, one for 2 people, one for the third. It took us nearly an hour to clear snow, pitch the tents, and dig out a fire ring lined with rocks we found under the snow. Next was the food. We knew we were supposed to hang our food bags to keep animals away, but honestly, we didn't really know what we were doing. We picked a branch that looked high enough, tossed a rope over it, and tied the bags up. Looking back, they probably hung no more than 8 feet off the ground, but we didn't know any better. By the time we finished setting up, the sun was dipping behind the mountains. The temperature dropped fast. That's the thing about winter camping. Summer nights are long and warm, but in January, darkness falls early and brings the cold with it. We started a fire and cooked our freeze-dried meals, beef stroganoff and chicken teriyaki or something like that. It tasted like cardboard, but we were starving, so it didn't matter. We made hot chocolate from those little packets and sat around the fire, joking about being real mountain men now. One of my friends laughed that his girlfriend would never believe he actually did this. Another complained that his sleeping bag wasn't as warm as the store had promised. That first night was cold but peaceful. We heard the wind whistling through the trees, the occasional clump of snow falling from a branch, the crack of wood in the fire, normal sounds, natural sounds. We stayed up a while, feeding the fire, talking nonsense, until the cold finally pushed us into our tents. I remember lying in my sleeping bag, listening to the wind, feeling proud that we'd made it this far. The bag was warm enough, the foam pad kept me off the frozen ground, and I was exhausted from the hike. I drifted off easily, thinking about the next 2 days, the pictures we'd take, the stories we'd tell when we got home. That was the last good night's sleep I ever had. I woke to screaming. The sun had just begun to rise. Gray light filled my tent. One of my friends was outside yelling for us to come out. I crawled from my bag, the cold hitting me like a wall, and unzipped the tent flap. The temperature had dropped overnight, probably around 10 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. My breath came out in thick clouds. One of the food bags lay on the ground, not just fallen, but torn open, its contents scattered across the snow. The freeze-dried packets were ripped apart, wrappers shredded, trail mix spilled and trampled. The other bag still hung from the branch, but it looked like something had tried to reach it too. The snow all around was disturbed, churned up, footprints everywhere as if something had been moving around the camp for a while. We stood there in our long underwear and jackets, staring at the mess, trying to make sense of it. One of my friends said it must have been a wolverine. Another thought, maybe a hungry fox had figured out how to climb the tree. We didn't want to admit we'd hung the bags too low, that it was our mistake. And we definitely didn't want to admit that something bigger might have come into camp while we slept. One of my friends tried to laugh it off. Good thing bears are hibernating, right? We all laughed too, but it was nervous laughter, because something had been there. Something strong enough to pull down a bag and tear it open. We cleaned up what we could, salvaging any food that was still sealed. We'd lost about a third of our supplies, not great, but manageable. It was only our second day after all. We'd be fine. After breakfast, more freeze-dried food, this time oatmeal, we decided to explore the area. The frozen creek looked interesting, winding deep into the woods, so we followed it upstream. The snow grew deeper as we went, sometimes up to our thighs. We took turns breaking the trail, switching when the person up front got too tired. About half a mile from camp, we found the footprints. They were in a patch of fresh snow near the creek, clear as day. At first, I thought they were just footprints from another hiker, but as I got closer, I realized they were too big. Each print was at least twice the size of any of our boots. The stride between them was enormous, far longer than any human step. We just stood there staring. Each print had 5 toes, shaped like a human foot, only much, much larger. The impressions were deep too, pressed hard into the snow, like whatever made them had to weigh hundreds of pounds. One of my friends laughed and said, "Must be Bigfoot." We all laughed with him. It sounded ridiculous. Bigfoot wasn't real. These had to be our own tracks from yesterday, melted and refrozen somehow. Strange, sure, but possible. Snow can play tricks like that, right? It melts a little under sunlight, freezes again overnight, and everything looks bigger, distorted. But even then, something about it felt off. That explanation didn't quite fit. These prints were stamped into freshly fallen snow, the kind that had come down overnight. They hadn't melted or warped at all. The edges were crisp, every toe perfectly defined. We took a few photos with our phones. Looking at them now, you can see how massive the prints are compared to our boots in the frame. But at the time, we just told ourselves they were nothing, just weird shapes in the snow, because believing anything else would have been insane. We spent the rest of the afternoon back at camp, trying to build a better windbreak around the tents using fallen branches we'd found in the woods. We also gathered more firewood, dragging dead logs through the snow, breaking branches, stacking them near the fire ring. The work kept us warm, but by late afternoon, it started snowing again, big, heavy flakes that clung to everything. When dusk settled, we heard a sound that made us stop. A deep, echoing knock from somewhere in the trees. Thud, thud, thud. 3 times and then silence. Then, from another direction again. Thud, thud, thud. We all looked at each other. One of my friends said it was probably a woodpecker, but we all knew woodpeckers don't sound like that and they don't come out at dusk in the dead of winter. Another friend guessed maybe it was trees cracking in the cold. That seemed more reasonable, so we went with it. But the knocking kept going, coming from different points all around us, like something was moving through the forest, communicating. None of us said it out loud, but I knew we were all thinking the same thing. Something was out there, and it knew we were here. We built up the fire while there was still a little light left, hurried through dinner, more freeze-dried food. I was already sick of it. The snow fell harder now. We sat close to the fire, trying to act normal, trying to keep the conversation going, but the laughter had stopped. We kept glancing toward the darkness beyond the firelight, seeing shapes that probably weren't there. Then came the sound of a branch snapping sharp, loud, then another, the heavy crunch of snow being pushed aside. Something big was moving out there, just beyond where the firelight ended. We could hear it circling us, the weight of it breaking through brush, the snow compacting under its steps. The trees shook, branches cracked, but we never saw what was making the noise. One of my friends tossed more wood onto the fire and the flames flared brighter. We all instinctively moved closer to it. No one wanted to say it aloud, but we were terrified. This wasn't a fox or a wolverine. This was something huge, and it wanted us to know it was there. We decided to turn in early, keeping the fire burning low but steady, with extra wood piled nearby. And the moment we crawled into our tents, the sounds stopped. The forest went silent. Too silent. No wind, no small animals, nothing. Just stillness, and the soft hiss of falling snow. Inside my tent, I lay in my sleeping bag fully dressed, listening. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I told myself it was just my imagination, just nerves from being somewhere unfamiliar. Animals are more afraid of us than we are of them, right? That's what people always say. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. Something that had been watching us all day. I don't know what time it was when I woke up again. Sometime past midnight, the tent was pitch black. I woke because I heard breathing. Not mine. Something was outside. Heavy, raspy breaths, deep and slow, like a giant thing inhaling and exhaling the frozen air. I could see my own breath fogging in the darkness, small clouds rising and fading, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I was too scared. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching across the frozen crust of snow, moving around the campsite, each step loud and clear and heavy. Whatever it was big. The footsteps circled my tent. I heard them pass along one side, then behind me, then up the other side until they stopped, right next to my head, maybe 3 feet away. I held my breath. I didn't move a muscle. My hands clenched tight inside my sleeping bag, my whole body frozen in place. The breathing outside continued slow, deep, raspy, almost a growl at the end of every exhale. And then came the smell. Even through the fabric of the tent, I could smell it. A foul, damp stench like wet dog mixed with something dead and rotting for days. The side of the tent bent inward slightly, as if something were leaning against it or sniffing it. It felt endless, though it probably lasted only a minute. Whatever it was, it stood there breathing, waiting. I was certain it knew I was inside. It could probably hear my heart pounding through my chest. Then, finally, it moved away. I heard the crunch of snow as it walked toward the other tent. My friends were whispering frantically. They were awake too. They'd heard it the same thing I had. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I just lay there in the dark, listening for every sound, waiting for the tent to rip open. But eventually, the noises faded. The breathing stopped. Whatever it was had gone back into the forest. When dawn finally came, I don't think I'd ever been so relieved to see daylight. We all stumbled out of our tents, pale and shaken. No one even had to ask the question, we all knew we'd heard it. We stood in the freezing morning air, our breath clouding in front of us, and looked around the campsite. Both food bags were on the ground, torn to shreds. Not a single scrap of food remained. All our supplies were gone. But that wasn't the worst part. One of the tents, the one my friend had slept in, had long gashes down its nylon wall. Deep, vertical slashes like something with claws or fingers had dragged across it. The marks were high up, maybe 6 feet from the ground, and the footprints were everywhere. The same huge tracks we'd found by the creek now surrounded the camp, circling the fire pit, both tents, everything. A clear trail of prints led off into the woods, where whatever made them had vanished. We stood there in silence, staring at the evidence. This wasn't a fox. This wasn't a wolverine. This was something massive and intelligent enough to try to scare us. One of my friends said we should pack up immediately and head back to the trailhead, but another argued that we only had one more night left anyway. We were supposed to leave in the morning. If we could just hold out one more night, we'd be fine. Leaving now would feel like admitting defeat. I wish we had left. I wish we'd listened to that first instinct and gotten out while we still could. But we were young and stupid and too proud to admit we were in over our heads. So, we stayed. We spent the morning close to camp, keeping the fire burning, staying alert. The snow had stopped falling, but the sky was still heavy and gray like more was coming. We divided what little food we had left. A few energy bars, a couple of unopened packets. We melted snow for water. No one talked much. We were all scared, though no one wanted to say it. By noon, one of us suggested we take a short hike to stretch our legs, kill some time before packing up in the morning. Looking back now, that was the worst decision we could have made. But sitting in camp, waiting, only made the fear worse. Moving felt better than waiting. We didn't go far, maybe half a mile from camp, following a ridge that cut through the snow. The terrain there was rougher, the drifts deeper, the obstacles thicker. We were just about to turn back when we found it. It stood in a small clearing among the evergreens, a crude shelter made of broken branches stacked deliberately to form a kind of lean-to. The limbs were thick, some 6 feet long, stripped of smaller twigs and bark. This wasn't a natural fall. It had been built. We stood at the edge of the clearing, just staring. One of my friends guessed maybe it was something a hunter or another camper had made. But there were no footprints, none except the same massive tracks we'd seen before. And the structure looked old, weathered, half buried in snow, like it had been there for weeks. Near the shelter, we found a pile of bones half buried in the drift. Deer bones, maybe some rabbit, and something larger we couldn't identify. They were cracked open, the marrow gone, gnawed at the ends. The smell hit us hard, a reeking, nauseating stench that made my eyes water. Even in the freezing air, it was thick and sickly rotting meat mixed with that same wet dog odor we'd smelled the night before. The stench was overpowering the smell of something that had lived and fed there for a long time. One of my friends spotted a tuft of hair caught on a low branch near the shelter. He called us over. We all leaned in to look. The hair was dark, coarse, stiff too long and too thick for a bear, too rough for a deer. It was maybe 4 or 5 inches long, matted with dirt and snow. That's when we finally said out loud what we'd all been thinking since the night before. Something was living out here. Something huge, intelligent, and territorial. And it had found our camp. We needed to leave. Now, we ran almost sliding and falling our way back through the snow, panic taking over. By the time we reached camp, it was destroyed. Both tents ripped wide open and partially collapsed. Tent poles bent and broken. Our gear scattered everywhere. Sleeping bags dragged out into the snow, backpacks torn apart, contents strewn across the ground. Our cooking equipment was smashed and flung around. Metal pots dented and crushed like someone had stomped on them. One sleeping bag had been dragged into the forest. We could see the trail in the snow where it had been pulled. Another was shredded completely, insulation spilling across the campsite like fake snow. Whoever or whatever had done this wasn't just looking for food. It wanted us gone. Or worse, this wasn't an animal searching for scraps. This was deliberate. A message. We didn't have to say a word. We just started grabbing whatever we could salvage, stuffing gear into our torn backpacks. We moved fast, frantic, glancing over our shoulders every few seconds. The sun was already dropping behind the ridge. We'd spent more time exploring than we'd realized. It was after 2 in the afternoon, and in the mountains in January, that meant maybe 3 hours of daylight left. 4, if we were lucky. We should have been more careful about what we packed, what we actually needed. But fear doesn't care about logic. We just grabbed what was closest and started throwing it all together. And then we heard it. A sound that froze the blood in our veins. A deep, guttural roar, low, rough, and echoing across the snowy clearing. It came from the tree line about 100 feet away. It wasn't like anything I'd ever heard before. Not a bear, not a mountain lion, not any animal that should exist in those woods. It was so powerful it made my ears ring. I could feel it reverberate in my chest. All 3 of us turned toward the sound, and that's when we saw it. It stepped out from between the trees, and for a moment, my brain simply refused to process what I was looking at. It was too big, too wrong. No creature that size should move that quietly. It stood maybe 8 feet tall, maybe more, covered head to toe in thick, dark fur that looked almost black against the snow. Its shape was human, but off. 2 arms, 2 legs, walking upright. But the proportions were wrong. Its arms hung too long, swinging past its knees. Its shoulders were massive, its chest broad and thick with muscle. The head sat low between those hulking shoulders, almost no neck at all. And the face, God, the face, not quite human, not quite ape. The features were flat, with a wide nose and a heavy brow, and those eyes pale, expressionless, intelligent, cold, calculating. It stood there on the edge of the clearing, snow falling softly around it, its breath rising in visible clouds. Completely still, just watching us. None of us moved. We stood frozen beside the wreckage of our tents, half-packed backpacks hanging from limp hands, staring at a thing that shouldn't exist. The only sounds were our own ragged breathing and the whisper of wind through the trees. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then it stepped forward. 1 step, then another. Each movement smooth, deliberate, effortless, gliding over the snow that had nearly crippled us all weekend, as if it weighed nothing at all. It wasn't charging. It was approaching slowly, purposefully studying us. One of my friends screamed. Not a word, just a raw, broken sound of terror. That was enough. All three of us bolted, grabbing our packs and running down the trail we'd hiked 2 days earlier, plunging through knee-deep snow that clung to our legs and dragged us down. Every step was a fight. My thighs burned, my lungs were on fire, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The packs slammed against our backs, the straps cutting into our shoulders, but we didn't stop. We couldn't. Behind us came the sound of trees snapping, heavy footfalls pounding through the forest. It was chasing us. And it was fast. So much faster than we were. It tore through the snow like it wasn't even there, while we stumbled and flailed like idiots. I went down first. My foot caught on something buried under the snow, a root, a log, and I went face first into the drift. Cold powder filled my mouth and nose as I gasped and choked. My friends grabbed me by the pack straps, yanking me upright, and we kept running. Then came another roar, closer this time. So close I could hear its breathing, deep, ragged, mechanical almost, like a diesel engine struggling for air. I could hear the snow crunching beneath its weight, the sharp crack of branches breaking as it plowed through the trees behind us. We reached a fork in the trail. One path veered left, downhill, toward the main route, and eventually the trailhead. The other climbed sharply upward toward the ridge. We should have stayed together. I know that now. You never split up when something's chasing you. But panic doesn't think. One of my friends shouted that we should split up, maybe confuse it, then meet back at the car. Before we could argue, he was already gone, sprinting up the right-hand path toward the ridge. The other friend and I took the downhill route, slipping and stumbling as we went. Almost immediately, we heard the scream. It came from the ridge, high-pitched, terrified, and then cut off mid-breath, like someone had flipped a switch. We stopped. Just stood there in the snow, gasping for air, staring at each other. We didn't need to say it. We both knew, but we couldn't accept it. He's fine, I told myself. He just fell. He'll catch up. But deep down, I knew the truth. We both did. My friend grabbed my arm and pulled me forward. "Keep moving," he said. So we did. We ran down the trail, the echo of that scream still bouncing around in my skull, trying not to think about what it meant. We ran until our lungs burned from the cold, until our legs felt like they would give out. The trail was barely visible now under the fresh snow, the light fading fast. Everything looked the same, gray, white, endless. The trees crowded close on both sides, heavy with snow, claustrophobic. That's when I heard it off to the left. Something moving through the trees, branches shaking, snow falling in bursts from above. It was circling us. Or maybe there was more than one. I couldn't tell. Everything was happening too fast. Then my friend tripped his foot catching on a buried log and went down hard. I heard the snap before I saw it. His ankle twisted under him with a sickening crack, and he screamed in pain, gasping for breath through the cold air. He tried to stand, but fell back into the snow. His ankle was already swelling, his face pale with pain. I tried to lift him, to get his arm around my shoulder, but he could barely put weight on it. We managed maybe 10 feet before he collapsed again. We couldn't go any farther. Not together. Not with his leg like that. That's when we saw it up ahead, cutting across the trail. It stepped out from behind a massive evergreen, and in that instant we knew. It had circled us while we ran. Now it was between us and safety. Up close, it was even worse. The face was a twisted blend of man and ape, patches of bare skin visible around the eyes and mouth, mottled against the dark fur. When it opened its mouth, I saw its teeth huge, yellow, and sharp. Steam poured from its breath, fogging in the freezing air. Even from 20 feet away, the stench hit me, rot, musk, and something chemical, something foul that burned my throat. It moved toward us slowly, each step sinking deep into the snow. There was no hurry. It knew we had nowhere left to go. My friend shoved me backward, shouting for me to run. He grabbed a fallen branch from the snow, thick, heavy, as long as his arm, and turned to face it. The last thing I saw as I spun and ran was him standing there in the snow, that branch raised like a weapon, staring up at something twice his height. The creature took one more step toward him, then I ran. I crashed into the forest, blind with panic. Branches whipped at my face, tearing at my jacket. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't look back. Behind me came the sounds roaring, a human scream, or something that wasn't. The thud of impact, the crash of splintering wood. Then silence. Only wind. Only my own gasping breath and the crunch of my boots in the snow. I ran until my body gave out. I didn't care which direction anymore. I just needed to get away. Branches clawed at me. Snow filled my collar, my mouth, my eyes. I fell again and again, then staggered back to my feet and kept running. No direction, no plan, just movement. At last, my legs gave out completely. I dropped behind a fallen log, half buried in snow, and pressed myself against it, forcing myself to stay still. My lungs burned from the cold air. My legs trembled uncontrollably. My clothes were soaked with sweat and snow, and blood trickled down from where the branches had scraped my face. It was dark now, completely dark. Thick clouds smothered the moonlight. I could only see a few feet in any direction. Snow fell steadily, muting every sound. Then I heard it. The faint crack of branches breaking. The crunch of something enormous moving through the drifts. It was looking for me. I could hear the trees shifting, the snow falling in heavy clumps as it passed, and then sniffing. A wet, guttural sound, like an animal drawing in my scent. It moved close. So close, I could smell it, the same rancid stench of decay and musk. I pressed myself flat into the snow behind the log and didn't breathe. It moved past me, slowly, then farther away. I wanted to move, to crawl, to run, but I couldn't. I was too scared to move, too cold to think. I knew I was slipping into hypothermia. I shivered uncontrollably, my fingers and toes gone numb, but I knew if I moved, it would find me. And if it found me, I was dead. I lay there for hours, maybe 3, maybe 5. Time didn't mean anything anymore. There was only the cold, the dark, and the waiting. Sometimes I'd hear faint noises out in the woods, the crunch of snow, a tree creaking under its own weight, and I'd freeze, waiting for it to pass. Eventually, I stopped shivering. That's when I knew things were bad. Even in my fogged, half-conscious mind, I understood what that meant. When the shaking stops, it means your body's giving up. I was dying. I had to move, or I'd freeze to death behind that log. When the first gray light of dawn began to bleed through the trees, I forced myself to stand. My legs barely worked. My fingers were white and stiff, curling uselessly, but I was still alive, and I had to stay that way. I didn't know where I was. The forest looked completely different under the snow, white, gray, endless, unfamiliar. I picked a direction that sloped downward and started walking. Maybe it would lead to the trail. Maybe it wouldn't. I didn't care anymore. I just needed to move. I walked for what felt like hours or maybe minutes. Time was strange. My head was foggy, dizzy from cold and exhaustion. I fell over and over, but each time I stood back up and kept going. I ate handfuls of snow for water, even though I knew it would only make the hypothermia worse. I was too thirsty to care. The sun must have been up by then, hidden behind the clouds. Everything around me was washed in shades of gray. Step by step, I pushed forward, because if I stopped moving, I'd die. That was the only thought I had left to hold on to. I don't remember finding the snowmobile trail. One minute I was lost in the forest, and the next I was standing on a hard-packed snow trail. No more deep powder, just the solid crunch of ice beneath my boots. I stood there, swaying, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then I heard it, the distant whine of an engine. A snowmobile. It was coming down the trail toward me. I tried to wave, but my arms barely moved. I think I collapsed before they even reached me. I remember lying there on the snow, watching the snowmobile stop, seeing someone jump off and rush toward me. They spoke to me, but I couldn't understand the words. Then I was on the back of the snowmobile, clutching weakly at the driver's jacket as we sped through the forest. The trees blurred past, the wind stung my face, and then, nothing. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Warm light, IV lines in my arm, a blanket tucked tightly around me. My fingers and toes burned pain like fire and ice mixed together, but the doctors said it wasn't severe frostbite. I was lucky. A few more hours out there, and I would have lost them. Maybe more. The first people to question me were the rangers, then the police. They had so many questions. Where were my friends? What happened? Why was I alone? How did I get lost? I told them everything. Every single detail. I could remember the campsite, the destruction, the footprints, the creature, the chase. They didn't believe me. I could see it on their faces. They kept their professional tone, nodding, taking notes, but I knew. They thought I was confused, hallucinating from hypothermia, grasping for explanations. One officer asked if I'd hit my head when I fell. A ranger asked if we'd been drinking or using anything. I tried to make them understand the tracks were real, the campsite was real. My friends hadn't just gotten lost. Something had taken them. Something huge. Something that wasn't human. But they just kept nodding, writing in their notebooks, pretending to listen. Search and rescue teams went out that same day. Snowmobiles, skis, even helicopters when the weather cleared. They had my description of the campsite, the trails we'd taken, the GPS coordinates from the trailhead. They found the camp that same afternoon exactly where I said it would be. And it was just like I described. The tents shredded, gear scattered, everything torn apart. They took photos, logged the evidence, wrote reports. Everything matched my story. Then, on the alternate trail, the one my friend had taken when we split up, they found signs of a struggle. Blood frozen into the snow, drag marks leading into the woods. They followed the trail and found him about a quarter mile from the tree line, or what was left of him. The official report said he'd been violently mauled, partially buried in snow, scavenged by wildlife. There was enough left to identify him, but not enough to bring home. The ranger who told me all this couldn't meet my eyes. He said it was one of the worst scenes he'd seen in 20 years of search and rescue. They never found the other friend. They found his backpack near a rocky ledge, ripped open, torn to pieces. They found his clothes too, shredded, blood-stained, drag marks at the edge of the cliff. The search went on for 2 weeks. They brought in dogs, drones, helicopters, thermal imaging. They scoured a 10-mile radius around the campsite. Nothing. Eventually, they found a bear den less than 10 feet from where we'd camped. An old den recently used. Inside were pieces of our gear, a ripped sleeping bag, a food bag, some scattered supplies. And just like that, the official explanation took shape. A bear. It had to be a bear. A black bear that hadn't fully hibernated, maybe woken by a warm spell, hungry and territorial. We'd set up camp near its den. The smell of food had drawn it in. It attacked the camp, chased us, and killed my friends as we ran. 3 weeks later, they shot and killed a large black bear in the same area, about 400 pounds. Tests showed traces of human DNA. That was enough for them. Case closed. A tragic bear attack. 3 young men, inexperienced, camping in winter where they shouldn't have been and paying the price. They released me after 4 days. I had moderate frostbite on 3 fingers and 2 toes, but the doctors saved them. Some bruises, cuts from branches, dehydration, malnutrition, but I was alive, and my friends were dead. I tried to tell everyone what really happened. My parents, our friends, the people who came to the memorial service. I tried to explain it wasn't a bear. I saw what attacked us. The footprints were real. None of it makes sense otherwise. No one believed me. They were kind about it, gentle even. You've been through trauma, they said. Hypothermia causes confusion. You imagine things. The mind plays tricks under stress. They told me I should see someone. That therapy would help. That medication might calm the nightmares. But they didn't see what I saw. They didn't hear it breathing. They didn't see those eyes. And sometimes, when I close mine, I still see them, pale and watching, from somewhere out there in the snow. They told me to stop talking about it, to focus on healing. My therapist was gentle but firm. She explained that when people experience trauma, especially under extreme stress, hypothermia, and oxygen deprivation, the brain can create false memories to fill in the gaps. She said maybe my mind had taken real elements, the bear, the attack, my friends' deaths, and turned them into something else. Something easier to handle. Something I could control. She asked me why I thought I'd seen a creature instead of just accepting it was a bear. I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I just didn't want to say it out loud. After a month of everyone telling me I was wrong, I stopped arguing. I stopped trying to convince anyone. When people asked what happened, I just said, bear attack. If they pressed for details, I said, I don't remember much. Shock, trauma, simple explanations. That seemed to satisfy them. They stopped looking at me with that mix of pity and fear. Life went on, but I remember the footprints too big, too human, too clear to be explained away. I remember the way it moved across the snow, weightless and effortless. I remember its face when it stepped out of the trees. The intelligence in those pale eyes. Bears don't build shelters. Bears don't deliberately destroy camps to terrify people. Bears don't herd prey, cutting off escape routes. And bears don't make that sound, that deep, resonant roar I still hear in my nightmares. And bears hibernate in winter. Everyone knows that. I left the Pacific Northwest after that. I couldn't stand the mountains anymore. I can't even look at snow without feeling that cold panic tighten in my chest. Winter is the worst. Every year, when the temperature drops and the first snow falls, I'm back there again running through the trees, hearing my friends scream. I don't camp anymore, I tell people. I don't even like the woods. Friends invite me on hiking trips, and I make excuses. They think I'm paranoid, that I need to face my fears, move on. But they don't understand. Some fears are rational. Some fears keep you alive. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I scroll through online forums about strange creatures, cryptid sightings, Bigfoot encounters. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of stories. People who've seen something in the woods that shouldn't exist. Most of them never file official reports. Most are dismissed as crazy. I've read about encounters all across the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Northern California. So many stories from those mountains. People hear wood knocking sounds deep in the forest. They find massive footprints. They see dark, towering shapes moving between the trees. Campsites destroyed without explanation. Some of those stories are obvious hoaxes. Some are simple misidentifications. A bear, a shadow, fear playing tricks. But some sound right. Too specific. Too familiar. Details that match what I saw, the way it moved, the deliberate intelligence in its actions, the sense that it wasn't just surviving, it was hunting. I've never posted my story, never joined the forums, never reached out to the people who run those sites. What would be the point? I'd just be another anonymous voice claiming to have seen something unbelievable. And I don't want attention. I don't want arguments. I don't want so-called experts dissecting my words or telling me what I really saw. But I read them. I read every story from the Cascades, every report out of Washington State, every winter encounter, and I know I'm not alone. Other people have seen it too. Some of them lived. Some, maybe, didn't, and their disappearances were filed away as accidents, falls, or hikers gone missing. If you actually look at the numbers, they're staggering. Hundreds of people vanish every year in national parks and forests. Most are found. Some never are. Some leave no trace at all, and their cases fade into silence. Search and rescue teams do their best, but those wilderness areas are vast millions of acres where a person can disappear forever. How many of those disappearances were truly accidents? How many were something else? I think about the ranger who told me what they found of my friend. The look on his face when he said it was one of the worst things he'd seen in 20 years. Sure, bears attack people sometimes, but enough to shake a veteran ranger that badly? I wanted to ask him what it really looked like, what he really thought happened. But I didn't. I was too afraid of the answer. That bear they killed, the one they said had human DNA? I still think about that. Did it really kill my friends? Or did it just scavenge what was left afterward? Bears are opportunists. They'll eat carrion if they find it. Maybe that's how the DNA got there. But no one wanted to think about that possibility. Because the alternative is worse. Much worse. A bear attack. Neat, simple, easy to understand. Case closed. I looked up the den they'd found. I filed a public records request for the full search and rescue report. I spent hours reading it. The den was 3 miles from our campsite, 3 miles across rough, snow-choked terrain. Could a bear really drag all that gear that far? Sleeping bags, food packs, cookware 3 miles through deep snow? And the bear they killed? I saw the photos in the report. It was big, sure, nearly 400 pounds. But was it big enough to leave footprints twice the size of a man's? Tall enough to rake claw marks 7 feet up the side of a tent? Smart enough to systematically destroy a camp in the middle of the night, to circle behind us, cut off our escape, and chase us with what felt like deliberate strategy? Black bears can stand on their hind legs. They can look tall, but they don't walk upright for long. They don't move effortlessly through waist-deep snow the way that thing did. They don't have those proportions, those arms, those shoulders, that human shape. But I don't say these things anymore. I've learned my lesson. People don't want to hear it. They want simple answers. They want to believe the wilderness, while dangerous, is still understandable. That all threats are known, documented, explained. They don't want to consider that something else might be out there, something we don't yet understand. I don't know what to do with that knowledge. I can't prove it to anyone. I can't make anyone believe me. And I can't go back and change what happened. All I can do is live with it, carry it, try to build some kind of life around the horror that followed me home. My therapist tells me to focus on healing, to move forward, to accept that what happened was a tragedy, but it's in the past. She wants me to stop obsessing over the little details, to stop questioning the official story, to stop searching for validation online. She says my fixation on what really happened is keeping me from grieving, keeping me from living. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am obsessed. Maybe my refusal to let go is just a way to avoid facing the real truth, that my friends are dead, and nothing I say, or prove, or believe will bring them back. But I can't let it go, because if I accept it was just a bear, then I'm saying I don't trust my own eyes, my own memory, my own experience. I'm saying everyone else knows more about what happened to me than I do. And once you start doubting your own sense of reality, what's left? So I live in this strange limbo. In public, I nod along with the simple version. Privately, I know the truth. I live a normal life, carrying a secret most people would call delusion. I smile and agree when someone mentions bears. I stay quiet when documentaries insist Bigfoot is a myth. I keep my story to myself. Sometimes I think about writing it all down, not to publish it, not to convince anyone, just to record it. So if something ever happens to me, if I disappear or die unexpectedly, there will be a record of what really happened. Maybe I'll hide it somewhere, someplace it might one day be found. Maybe I'll leave instructions to open it after I'm gone. Maybe no one will ever read it, but at least it will exist. Or maybe I'll lock it away forever, take it to the grave with me. Let the official story stand. Let my friends be remembered as victims of a tragic bear attack. Just another wilderness accident gone wrong. Let the creature remain forgotten, unexplained, buried in folklore and disputed sightings, in testimonies mocked and dismissed. I don't know which choice is right. Maybe there isn't one. All I know is this. If you're reading this, if you're planning a winter camping trip in the Pacific Northwest, if you're dreaming about adventure in those mountains, be careful. Prepare better than you think you need to. Don't underestimate how dangerous it is out there. Don't assume you understand every risk. And if you ever see footprints that are too big, or hear sounds that don't belong to any animal you know, or feel something watching you from the dark beyond the firelight, trust that feeling. Pack up. Leave. Don't wait to see if you're right. Don't try to find proof. Don't stay another night. Just go.